Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. This lecture we will be speaking about Mycobacteria. Mycobacteria grow more slowly than most human pathogenic bacteria because of their hydrophobic cell surfaces, which cause them to clump and inhibit permeability of nutrients into the cells. يعني الغلاف معناته يكون منفر للماء، ولذلك دخول المواد الغذائية ومن ذلك دخول الأدوية إلى داخل المايكرو أورجانيزم يكون قليل. Tubercle bacilli are resistant to drying and survive for long periods in dried sputum. Worldwide, Mycobacterium tuberculosis causes more death than any other single microbial agent. Approximately 1/3 of the world's population is infected with this organism. Each year it is estimated that 3 million people die of tuberculosis and that 8 million new cases occur. اللي هو أعداد كلش كبيرة. Route of infection. The great majority of tuberculosis infections are first contracted by inhaled droplet nuclei carrying the causative organism, and its initial site of infection is the lung. In the developed country, tuberculosis is almost exclusively a human disease. However, in developing countries like our country, Mycobacterium bovis also causes tuberculosis in humans. Mycobacterium bovis is found in cow's milk, which unless pasteurized can cause gastrointestinal tuberculosis in human. يعني عملية الباسترايزيشن، عملية غلي الحليب هي اللي تقضي على المايكوبكتيريوم tuberculosis وتمنع حدوث tuberculosis in the gastrointestinal tract. The disease has a major sociological component which flourish with ignorance, poverty, overcrowding, poor hygiene, and during the social disruption of war and in economic disruption. يعني هو له علاقة بالحالات الاجتماعية الضعيفة. Under these conditions, the poor are the major victims, but all sectors of the society at risk. يعني بالضبط مثل ما قلنا هي عادة ينتعش في المناطق الفقيرة اللي تكون مزدحمة. Spread of the organism in the host. In the first infection, TB always spread from the initial site via the lymphatics to the regional lymph nodes. The bacilli may spread farther and reach the bloodstream, which in turn distributes bacilli to all organs, and this is what we call military distribution, or more miliary TB. The bloodstream can be invaded also by erosion of a vein, by a caseating tubercle or a lymph node. يعني lymph node اللي كان صار بيها infection وكان صار بيها كازيوس ماتيريال، يعني كان صار بيها مثل النكروسيس بالسنتر مالته، ممكن إلى تفتح إلى فين، وهذا الفين راح يحمل المايكرو اورجانيزم يعمل distribution throughout the body. If a caseating lesion discharges its content into the bronchus, they may be aspirated and distributed to the other part of the lung, or are swallowed and pass into the stomach and the intestine. يعني نفس المكان اللي صار بها infection في داخل الرئة، إذا صار بها secretion وبدأ يطلع منها مواد وبدأ تطلع مع السبيوتم، فممكن تتوزع إلى بقية أجزاء الرئة كذلك، أو إذا السبيوتم the patient is swallowing it، يعني عفوا يبلع البلغم مالته، فممكن تتوزع إلى الجاستروintestinal tract من ضمن الستومك والintestine. Immunity and hypersensitivity. Unless a host dies during the first infection with tubercle bacilli, a certain resistance is required, and there is an increased capacity to localize tubercle bacilli, to retain their multiplication and even to destroy them, to limit their spread and reduce lymphatic dissemination. هذا اللي يعمله our own host defense mechanism. This can be largely attributed to the ability of the mononuclear cells to limit the multiplication of ingested organisms and perhaps to destroy them. يعني هذا السبب هو humoral immunity، المناعة عن طريق الخلايا. Antibodies form against a variety of cellular constituents of the tubercle bacilli as well. يعني بالإضافة إلى المناعة الخلوية، بالإضافة إلى مناعة عن طريق بالإضافة إلى cellular immunity, there is also antibody immunity as well, forming against different parts of the tubercle bacilli. Clinical findings. Since TB can involve any organ or system, its clinical manifestations are protein. يعني عادة symptoms مالته تكون مختلفة ومنتشرة جدا. So symptoms may include fatigue, weakness, weight loss, and fever, which may be all of these may be signs of tuberculosis disease. Pulmonary involvement giving rise to chronic cough and spitting of blood يعني بين قوسين hemoptysis usually is associated with far advanced lesions. Drug dissemination leading to miliary tuberculosis with lesions in many organs and a high mortality rate may occur. Treatment. Multiple drug therapy is used to prevent the emergence of drug-resistant mutants during the long اللي هو عادة 6 إلى 9 أشهر duration of treatment. Organisms that become resistant to one drug will be inhibited by the other. يعني الفكرة من إنه إعطاء عدة أدوية حتى إذا صار resistant ضد أحد هذول الأدوية فالدواء الثاني هو اللي راح يغطي. Isoniazid اللي هو بين قوسين يسمى INH is a bactericidal drug is the mainstay of treatment. Treatment of most patients with pulmonary tuberculosis is with 3 drugs اللي هم Isoniazid يعني INH with rifampicin and pyrazinamide. INH and rifampicin are given for 6 months but pyrazinamide treatment is usually stopped after 2 months يعني يعطى عادة لشيء فقط. In patients who are immunocompromised, example AIDS patients, or who have disseminated disease or who are likely to have INH resistant organism يعني عنده organism يكون ما يشتغل عليه الأيزونايزايد. So a fourth drug اللي هو ethambutol is added and all 4 drugs are given for 9 to 12 months يعني هون الكورس مع العلاج صار لفترة أطول. Although therapy is usually given for months, the sputum positive patient becomes non-infective in 2 to 3 weeks after the beginning of the effective chemotherapy. يعني بعد أسبوعين من بدء العلاج المريض يصبح non-infective يعني خلال أول أسبوعين هو he is carrying the disease and he is spreading the disease to other people. The necessity for protracted therapy is attributed to يعني الحاجة إلى الفترة الطويلة من العلاج السبب مالته هو اللي راح نذكره حاليا. The intracellular location of the organism, the gaseous material which blocks penetration by the drug, the slow growth of the organism, and the metabolically inactive persisters within the lesion. So, because the organism is relatively metabolically inactive يعني المultiplication مع Mycobacterium tuberculosis عادة تكون عملية بطيئة جدا. The available chemotherapeutic drugs result in suppression of tuberculosis activity and eradication of most but not all TB and reactivation of the disease may occur in the future. يعني لأنه هو المايكرو أورجانيزم الاكتيفيتي مالته بطيئة لذلك على الرغم أنه هي أدوية كثيرة وعلى الرغم أنه هي قد تعطى لفترات طويلة لكن في كثير من الأحيان هي ما قد تقضي على كل أنواع كل المايكرو أورجانيزم الموجود لكن قد تقضي على معظمه. لذلك في بعض الأحيان يصير عندنا بعض الحالات أنه يصير reactivation of the disease بعد فترة من الزمن. Strains of Mycobacterium tuberculosis resistant to multiple drugs have emerged primarily in AIDS patients. The treatment of multi-drug resistant organisms usually involves the use of 4 to 5 drugs, including such drugs as ciprofloxacin, amikacin, ethionamide, and cycloserine. Non-compliance, and we mean by non-compliance, is the failure of the patient to complete the full course of the therapy. يعني أقصد إنه المريض بدأ يأخذ العلاج وبعد فترة قصيرة من أخذ العلاج شاف نفسه صار زين فبطل يأخذ العلاج فهذا يسمونه non-compliance ما كمل الكورس مع العلاج كامل. And this non-compliance is a major risk factor for the development of resistant organism to the drug, to multi-drug resistant organisms. Okay, so non-compliance is a major factor in allowing the resistant organisms to survive. One approach to the problem of non-compliance is directly observed therapy اللي هو هذا المتبعات في بلدنا يسمى بالدوت in which healthcare workers observe the patient taking the medication. يعني مثل اللي يحصل عندنا هون في العراق بعد ما يسجل المريض انه هو عنده مايكوبكتيريوم تيوبركلوسيس يذهب الى مركز الحميات او الى المستشفى الحميات وهذا ينعطي موعد انه لازم يوميا يجي الى المستشفى حتى يعطى العلاج ويراقب انه هو قد يبلع العلاج او قد ياخذ العلاج او قد يضرب الابره وبعدين يصلح انه يطلع تتاكد من انه المريض ملتزم بالعلاج. وفي حال انه المريض ما يجي فممكن اخذ اصلا عنوان بيته وممكن اخذ رقم تليفونه ورقم تليفون اقاربه حتى يتصلون بهم حتى يحاولون يجيبونه بشتى الطرق. Epidemiology. The most frequent source of infection is the human. who excretes particularly from his respiratory tract the large number of tubercle bacilli. Close contact, example, the family, and massive exposure, example, the medical personnel, make tuberculosis transmission by droplet nuclei most likely. The milk of tuberculosis cows is a source of infection where bovine is not well controlled and where milk is not pasteurized. يعني مثل ما قلنا في in the developing countries مثل بلدنا الحليب ايضا هو source مع المايكوبكتيريوم tuberculosis اللي بسبب انه يكون الانيمال ما كلش سليم وانه الحليب ما يغلى او ما يعقم بالطرق الصحيحة. The risk of acquiring tubercle bacilli is proportionate to the rate of active infection in the population, crowding, socio-economic disadvantages, and inadequacy of medical care. يعني هذول الأربع فقرات هم اللي راح تخلي المايكوبكتيريوم ينتشر أكثر بالمجتمع. The development of clinical disease after infection may have a genetic component. It is influenced by age, therefore it is seen in high risk. It has a high risk in infancy and in elderly, those who are under nutrition, those who have an immunological problem, those with coexisting disease, and other individuals whose host resistance factor is affected. Infection occurs at an earlier age in urban than in rural population. HIV infected patient, homeless persons, and the very young and the very old person. Primary infection can occur in any person exposed to an infectious source. Patients who have tuberculosis can be infected exogenously a second time. Endogenous reactivation tuberculosis occurs most commonly among persons with AIDS, the patients who are elderly, malnourished, alcoholic, or destitute men. ويقصد بهم الناس المشردين اللي ما عندهم بيوت. The reactivation type almost always begins at the apex of the lung where the oxygen tension is highest. يعني عادة الرياكتيفيشن يطلع في نفس المكان اللي انصابينه في أول مرة. Prevention and control. Prompt and effective treatment of patients with active tuberculosis and careful follow-up of their contacts with tuberculin test, X-rays, and appropriate treatment are the mainstay of public health tuberculosis control. يعني علاج المريض ومتابعة اللي صاروا ان كونتاكت معاهم عن طريق فحص التوبركلين عن طريق الأشعة هو أحسن طريقة للكنترول مع tuberculosis. Drug treatment of asymptomatic tuberculin positive persons and in tuberculin positive persons who must receive immunosuppressive drug greatly reduce the reactivation of the infection. يعني اللي عنده tuberculin positive ولكن هو asymptomatic او اللي عنده tuberculin positive وخاصة إذا هو قد يستخدم كيمو يعني immunosuppressive drugs فهذول definitely يحتاجون treatment حتى نقلل من activation of the reactivation infection. Individual host resistance. Non-specific factors may reduce host resistance, thus favoring the conversion of asymptomatic infection into disease. Such factors include starvation, gastrectomy, suppression of cellular immunity by drugs, example corticosteroids, or by infection, and HIV infection, and these are all major risk factors for tuberculosis. Immunization. Living virulent tubercle bacilli اللي هو ما يسمى بال BCG Bacillus calmos urine and attenuated bovine organism has been used to induce a certain amount of resistance in those heavily exposed to infection مثل في in the developing countries مثل في بلادنا اللي لا يزال يعطى لقاح البي سي جي لكل المرة. However in developed countries يعني مثل في بلاد أوروبا البي سي جي بطلوا ينطونه لأنه أصلا التوبركلوزز يعني نسبة التوبركلوز عندهم صارت أقل. The eradication of tuberculosis in cattle and the pasteurization of milk have a great effect in reducing Mycobacterium bovis infection. يعني الاهتمام بالماشية وكذلك التعقيم الحليب بصورة صحيحة حيقللنا من Mycobacterium bovis infection. Thank you very much.